and welcome to The Voice of the People. I'm your host, Nicholas Quallich, and today we are talking about civics and scripture. Specifically, we're learning about the two subjects are being discussed simultaneously in the community. And joining me today is Dustin Amundson. Dustin, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, first of all, just kind of give us a little bit of history about how you got involved and who you're representing.
I've been teaching, I guess I've been teaching Constitution classes for around 15 years. Started out with the federal Constitution. I've lived in North Dakota 10 years and kind of got involved locally and, kind of switched. And there's a variety of curriculum out there. I just want to educate people.
Sure. And how did you get interested in teaching this?
I actually was invited to what I thought was a Bible study, and it turns out that it was a little bit more, and it was Institute on the Constitution's federal Constitution course, and I kind of fell in love with it. Once I started to understand the founders' perspective and what all went into creating our Republican form of government, I was kind of hooked.
Yeah, and what are some of the things that got you hooked, as you say?
Just the power flow, where rights come from, and the fact that America is basically an experiment with self governance, and uh, if it fails, it may never be tried again.
And tell us, where exactly are you teaching this, or where are these courses like this being taught?
Um, the venue I'm using right now is New Song Church. It's the church I attend. I know people are going to say, "Oh, church, why are you doing that there?" But every course I teach is a religious course. The I guess the foundation, the crux of all the curriculum that I use is that every person was created in the image of God, and therefore they have intrinsic rights that are outside of government.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
as
sure.
long as they have that foundation, I consider them religious courses. So
Now you raise an interesting point because I'm sure there are some people who may kind of raise an eyebrow when you talk about civics and religion. So tell us how someone might balance the two.
um well, I mean, I think there's a misunderstanding of what the First Amendment, conveys or is intended to convey. The Supreme Court, if a person wants to understand the religious clauses in the First Amendment, the Supreme Court told us that we should look back to Thomas Jefferson's Statute for Religious Freedom to be able to interpret it. So if you go back to that document, it was Jefferson passed it in Virginia, right? So our Supreme Court says that's the document that you use to interpret the First Amendment, religious clauses. So if you go back to that, you'll see that the wall of separation that he mentioned isn't to keep religious people out of government. It's to keep the state from interfering with religion.
I know there's also been a lot of discussion currently and in the past talking about the whole idea of church and state, but obviously there is no one religion set apart here in the U.S. that the government functions under or would function under.
Right. And that's actually covered in that document as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't just work in one direction. He's not saying that state needs to stay out of religion and religion can, dictate what everybody does. Quite the opposite. It's there is a wall of separation, in a sense, and it's to make sure that all people, have the ability to follow their conscience, because ultimately their point was we're going to be judged by the great legislator or great judge of the universe, right? And we're going to be compared to his values. So, therefore, the founder's point was because we're going to be judged directly by God for whatever we do by following our conscience, man shouldn't interfere with it.
So, what are some of the topics specific that are being discussed at this class at the church you're teaching it at?
Well, I rotate through curriculum a lot. It's always centered on inherent rights. So this concept of being created in the image of God and having those inherent rights is a beautiful thing. It really is. That understanding, that belief is what ended slavery. You know, it's that concept. That we're all the same. We're all equal. We're created by the same God, and therefore, you know, we have to treat other people in the same way that we want to be treated. You know, but right now I'm going through a sheriff course. It's almost over. And it basically traces back the history of the office of sheriff and shows you that the sheriff is supposed to be an interposer. They're supposed to interpose between people and government.
Sheriff's office, you said it's an interposer. And then, so how does that kind of correlate with what you're teaching with this course?
Well, so this course counts towards sheriff and deputies continuing accreditation.
Okay.
So our plan is to start teaching it, to offering it to the sheriffs and deputies.
And how can people sign up for these courses, both the sheriff and the other course that you're taking?
If they wanted to attend my courses, look me up on Facebook, or you can go through New Song. The office will tell you the date. It's basically Saturday mornings at 8 o'clock. We meet there, and anybody's welcome to show up. We've had people of all stripes there. I don't really care. We're not saying anything crazy. It's just education on the way uh, the founders view of government, essentially.
And is it a how long of a course is this course?
You mean, well, like I said, I rotate through curriculums.
Yeah, let me ask it. Let
So
me ask it better.
this
How
particular
yeah.
course is, I think there was 5 lessons.
Okay.
Other courses can stretch up to 8 weeks. Other ones they're short and they can be covered in a day.
Hmm.
And we normally stay until around 9:30, and then Naomi has her class, so I'm kind of
Okay. Yeah, and
using
Naomi
that people
Bromke, who
go
was
to.
supposed to be here with us, couldn't make it, unfortunately, but she is one of the other teachers at the course. So, how many people are you getting? Have any idea as far as how many people are coming to each class?
Uh, it varies. Right now, with my sheriff course, it's just a small, tight knit group of people. There's 4 of us, and um, it's no need to get that any bigger. But when the other courses start, then yeah, we definitely want people to show up. And I think we have probably around 15 seats.
Oh, okay.
So they're
Okay.
small and compact. I'm not trying to get large audiences. It's nice that we can, go through it and stop and have discussions. And
Okay. So we certainly don't want to get you an overflow crowd for those bigger classes. So, uh, the sheriff's class now, can the public come to that one as well, or is it just mainly for law enforcement?
um, well, I'm teaching it to the public, to
Oh,
people.
okay.
But yeah, ultimately we're going to set it up as, you know, for the sheriffs and deputies continuing accreditation.
Okay.
So, and it's been approved by the state already. The state's all for it. So,
So when you're talking about these courses and when you kind of first open it up, the first time people show up, what are some of the common questions you get that people have been asking that maybe you have the answers to right away?
I wouldn't say it's so much questions. I would say it's surprise because once we start going through it, I normally get a reaction like, I've never heard this before. But the thing is, we cite original sources.
Mhm.
All the courses go back to original sources. So we can actually trace it back. And it's eye opening for people. It was for me because when I first started attending courses like this, it went against everything I had been taught. You know, for the, let's take the sheriff, for example. The sheriff is a CLEO, the chief law enforcement officer within their jurisdiction, which is a county, right? And you remember the old Eastwood movies where Clint Eastwood is a sheriff, and the feds are coming in and they're arguing back and forth about whose jurisdiction it is, you know. And the films will kind of lead you to believe that the feds have the ultimate authority, but the Supreme Court says otherwise. So, yeah, it's amazement and kind of shock that they've learned so differently than what they're learning.
Can I ask you, without giving us too much of a spoiler, what is one of the topics that you talk about and people go like, wow, I've never even thought about that?
Well, that one right there is one of them.
Sure.
That states are higher up in the hierarchy than the federal is. There's a lot of confusion on like the supremacy clause, and it's very simple to there's confusion about the supremacy clause with our legislators, and there's confusion, I guess, across the board on that. And simply put, if a power is delegated, specifically enumerated to the federal government in the federal constitution, then federal is boss. If it's not specifically enumerated, then it belongs to the state or the people, respectively.
Yeah. And I suppose you don't have to be a believer, but do you get a lot of people who don't necessarily believe, and you kind of change their attitude or their thinking?
Absolutely. Absolutely. See, the thing is, if our rights are not inherent, if our rights are at the whim of outside powers or government, they're not secure for anybody. So there is no reason. I love when atheists come in. I love talking to non-believers. And yeah, it's the same concepts work with them, and they realize that this whole thing is a good thing. It protects everybody alike.
So it's you teaching the class, Naomi Bromke, as we said, and is there anyone else teaching the class as well? No, just
Not
the two of you.
currently.
Okay.
And
Okay.
my venue changes. It's not always the church, but I love the church.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay. And so, and the name of the course is what?
the sheriff and the citizen is the one we're going through right now.
Okay.
Naomi's is, hold on, I took notes for Naomi's. It's a biblical citizenship class.
Biblical citizenship. Okay.
Yeah, and hers are Saturday mornings from 9:30 to 11 at New Song. If anybody wants to attend, contact Naomi. You can find it on uh, New Song's Facebook page.
Okay. And so, do you have any other sort of long-term plans for teaching this class and maybe any others in the future, as far as maybe a different topic related to that?
I think after this one, we're going to touch on a jury course.
Oh, okay.
What the jury is supposed to look like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of an eye-opening course too. But that concept is actually embedded in our Constitution. We're one of like 5 states that has, a mention of jury rights
Mm-hmm.
in our Constitution.
Okay.
So I've been doing this for, since I moved to North Dakota. I've had classes going on and off, and 5 years before that. So
Sure.
it's not a matter of now for me, but I think more people are starting to wake up. They're concerned about what's going on, across the country. They're concerned about the thing is, tyrannically minded people, if that's proper, they're going to always gravitate towards sources of power, right? Which is government. So we as American citizens need to have this knowledge. We need to understand what our rights are, so that we're able to see when they're being infringed on, so we can actually stand up and correct the situation. So I think as more people are starting to wake up, and their spider senses are telling them something's off, something's askew, they're starting to get more involved, and you're seeing classes pop up all over the place.
So you think that's prevalent now? You believe people, as you say, their spider senses are kind of going off?
I think so. I think there's they're hearing all the discussions going on, and like I said, these concepts are new for a lot of people, and it goes against what they've been taught. So they're investigating it. They're learning the other side of it. Their rights come from God, and governments were created to protect rights, and they're wanting to dive into it. They're wanting to learn more.
So you mentioned that, and I'm just curious, what what is don't want to get obviously too personal in other people's details, but can you tell me a little bit more about some of the more common things you say people have learned incorrectly, and how you go about correcting that?
The power flow is a big thing.
Okay.
Understanding that we're endowed with rights, and that we created government around us to protect those rights. And the locals created the states got together, and the federal constitution is actually a contract between the states, right? So we're taught to look at it from the top down, but really the power flow in America is from the bottom up.
Mm-hmm.
And the local has more power than the highest, so that whole concept, and it goes down a lot of different rabbit trails, but that's basically the concept that's being taught. Rights are inherent, and we created governments to protect them, and there are limits to government power. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So those limits are kind of ambiguous, even though they're spelled out in the 9th and 10th Amendments in the federal Constitution. A lot of the time at the state levels, it's much more ambiguous. So there's always a question of, where do state rights end and state powers end, and everything else goes to the people. Where is that line? That line's kind of ambiguous at the state level.
Mm-hmm. And how's the feedback been for you teaching this course?
I've never had any complaints.
That's always
So
good.
some classes are big.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, some classes are 15 to 20 people. Other classes are small and intimate. And, you know, uh, about the only complaints I've ever had are from people that are more, I don't know if I'd refer to them as anarchists, but they're not even satisfied with, limiting government power. They want, a little bit more, but I'm not there. I definitely think there's a role for the federal government. I think there's a role for local and state governments. We just need to figure out that line as a nation, and as a state, and as a local community, and we need to enforce that line.
What's one thing that you've learned, if I may ask, that's kind of surprised you as you've been teaching these classes over the amount of time that you have?
The biggest eye-opening thing for me came from Chris Ann Hall's genealogy of the Constitution. So she makes the claim that there's nothing new and original in our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, or our Declaration of Independence. It's all been borrowed from previous documents, starting at 1100 AD, right? And the king back in 1100 AD made a promise to the people that they wouldn't be tyrannical anymore, right? And this was in the British people, right? But we are British people, right? The War for Independence was a civil war, so we kind of follow that. But her point is that there's been a tug of war between the people and government since the beginning, and the king would want to take away rights, and the people would end up rising up and replacing the king in one way or another, and then they would have 100 years of peace or so, and then a new king would be in office, and they would follow that same standard. So all these concepts that are in our Declaration of Rights and Constitution and Declaration of Independence were borrowed from those previous documents. And the thing that stands out to me is nothing ever changes, right? The same things we're worried about now are the same things that the kings were doing back 1,000 years ago, or at 1100 AD. It's the same arguments, right? So that's been the biggest eye opener for me. Just seeing that history and understanding that, yes, these things happen every few hundred years.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think that's made you a better American citizen?
better American citizen. Well, I'm involved in civics. I'm
Sure.
involved in Republican Party. I don't know if, other than that, I don't know if what I'm doing is supposed to make me a better American citizen. I think more on the religious side would make me a better American citizen. Helping people, caring about people, doing the things that I'm supposed to do per God would make me a better American citizen. But definitely being involved. We all need to be involved. You know, if you're belly aching about the way things are, but you're not involved, I don't know what to say.
Well, on that note, if people for some reason aren't able to make the class for whatever reason, or they aren't comfortable going to a house of worship, what's one thing that someone can do tomorrow to be more informed as a citizen?
Vet candidates, right? Don't listen to what other people say. Um, Actually look into the voting records of candidates if they're incumbents, or if they're not, actually have a long, in-depth conversation with them. You know, offer them your vote in exchange for that conversation. Know who they are. Get to know their worldview, because that's going to be important. A lot of people, maybe their hearts are in the right direction. They're fantastic people. They get elected to office, but they don't understand the limits of power of the office that they just got in, especially with the legislators. And I guess our country can get hurt either through ignorance or malice, and it doesn't matter which one it is. The result is the same. And if somebody's elected to the legislature and they want to give the executive branch additional powers for their cause, what they don't understand is eventually their champion is no longer going to be in office, whoever's in the executive, and somebody else is going to be there. Everybody's goal should be, our laws should be written in such a way that they can't be abused, they can't be taken advantage of, because you don't know who's going to be in office 10 years down the road. So I think the whole concept is, be very careful what powers you give government, because tyrants always seek power sources. And eventually that will happen. I'm not saying it's happening now in North Dakota. I like, most of our North Dakotan legislators, but we just can't see the future. You know what I mean?
And one more time before we go, since we're running out of time here, Dustin, why don't you give us the times and the where we can take some of those classes again?
Sure. So at New Song Saturday mornings, my classes are at 8 o'clock. Naomi's are at 9:30. Same building. Um, I will have other classes going in the future. If it's a different venue, they can keep in touch through blizmansol.com.
Okay. Well, very good. We
There
will.
will be a calendar event, so we try to list all the upcoming classes on it.
All right, and we will have all the links for those classes over on our website, kxnet.com. Dustin, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I really appreciate it. We will be back with more questions and answers on the issues affecting you. Remember, it's your voice that matters, the voice of the people.